You're so sweet. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining my good friend, Dr. Jaime Falco and I. And we're just so excited to have just a fun, open, candid conversation. I've known Jaime for many years now, and she's somebody that I just highly respect. She's a good friend and just one of the most inspiring female optometrists that I know. So I have so many questions that I want to ask you, Jaime. And I think it would be just great for the listeners. And of course, during this webinar, you guys can submit questions in the chat box to the side. And then I also have a list of a bunch of questions that people had submitted to me before the webinar. So we'll try to get to those first. But Jaime, can you just kind of like tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about your practice?
Sure, of course. So I graduated in '09 from Indiana University. I worked in commercial optometry for 5 years before kind of hitting my plateau of, how I could grow. So I transitioned to private practice where I was a partial owner, and then I ended up full owner of my business pretty much exactly 3 years ago. I bought out my partner. So it's been fun. It's been interesting developing my own business model versus having a blended business model of someone who'd been in practice for 45 years. So
wow.
I'm really, by the way, I should have started off saying I'm really flattered, by everything you said, Stephanie. It's very humbling to hear such compliments and flattery coming from someone as accomplished and as passionate as you are. I really appreciate your time and our listeners' time today. I hope that people really get something from this conversation, something meaningful that allows them to practice at their highest level, both professionally, and interpersonally. So.
Yeah, I think that was just some of the conversations that kind of come up online, and there's just a big interest in business owners and kind of not only just the struggles and the challenges that we face as business owners, but a lot of people are really interested in kind of why we chose the path that we did, and just kind of figuring out if it's right for them. So I really hope that this is helpful, like you said, to some of the listeners on tonight. I am recording this so we can just play it again for people that weren't able to join, and hopefully this will help some of you. So first, Jaime, one of the reasons that I wanted to kind of have this kind of conversation is because some of the things that happened in your practice during COVID were like mind blowing to me. And I just wanted you to kind of talk to some of these key points. And if you remember, you sent some of these to me that I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So
Sure.
yeah, during COVID, you said you operated your business remotely from another state 90% of the time. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I have a fiance who's in Texas. I have a business in New Jersey, and you just kind of make it work. And I came down to Texas, and I have my second child February 18th. And so I'm like, okay, great, maternity leave. I'll be out for a little bit. And then everybody else decided to stay in as well. And COVID swept the nation. With Texas being a higher risk area as far as COVID transmission, it was a pretty isolating experience to not be able to be physically on site with my staff, whom I maintained full-time at full pay, just operating the office from a business perspective. We did not provide clinical care except for emergencies from when they declared a state of emergency in March through July.
Wow.
So that was a fun roller coaster, juggling new baby, 2-year-old at home, and remote business management, and certainly the morale aspects of COVID.
I mean, that just seems like almost impossible. Like, I think for me listening in, and probably some of the listeners as well, that just seems like not even doable for most doctors. And you had said that you were able to pay people like their full salary. How did that work?
Well, I was willing to invest in my talent. I cared very much that people were able to live through this, terrible time, really. New Jersey unemployment could take as long as 10 weeks for people. And for the average American who lives paycheck to paycheck, waiting 10 weeks could be catastrophic financially. So, you when you choose people, I think that it inspires loyalty, right? It makes people want to be part of your brand and part of your business. Except for, I don't know if you remember in my talking points, I had both of my employees quit my doctor's side pretty much within the same week. And one of them gave no notice and the other gave a week's notice. So
Oh my
that
gosh.
was at the very end of COVID. Basically, they decided to transition out, and I was like, all right, because what can you do, right? It's one of those things where you just keep moving forward. Because to your point, you can't wrap your brain around it because you're not in that situation, but you can either choose to do something or you don't do it, and either way there's repercussions.
Wow.
So if you have your mindset, and I'm very zen and I'm very like namaste, so I'm like, all right, well, these are my intentions, and you get through everything and you try to be inspiring and help people along the way. And I think that it lends again to that good brand where you can be in private practice and you can maintain just enough business to, and pay people through COVID.
Yeah.
People called and they wanted contact lenses. People called and they still wanted to come for exams. We just had to defer it.
Wow.
So, for some of the business owners watching now, I hope that you guys are seeing the same trends that we are booked, more than we were last year. We were, seeing more people who want to purchase from us locally as opposed to buying somewhere else. They recognize the importance of shop local. So I
That's
really hope that
awesome.
all of you guys are, aware that this trend is happening across the nation. And, certainly free social media marketing, free e-blasts, things that are going to draw people in if you offer a safe and comfortable environment, which those of us practicing are surely. You have an opportunity to have more of a deferred revenue.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about, Stephanie, is cold starting over COVID. I mean, I can't even fathom that business model or how you even get your foot in the door with that. Can you tell me about
Yeah.
that, please?
Yeah, I'd love to. So we have one request. If Dr. Falco could move a little closer, the volume is just slightly too soft.
Sorry,
So yeah, that's great.
I'm a little soft spoken inherently. So is
Oh,
this
you're
better?
perfect now. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, so long story short, I basically decided I wanted to open up this practice, and because there's a major meeting in Las Vegas called Global Specialty Lens Symposium, and I thought, great, I'm moving to Vegas. I can just piggyback it off of the Global Specialty Lens Symposium. And then it also corresponded around the same time when I sold my other three businesses. So the timing like worked out great, of course, from what we all just thought. And yeah, during GSLS, I was lecturing at that conference. And so my husband was the one that was at the office, like accepting all of the deliveries and going through all the inspections, the final stuff, getting equipment set up, doing all that stuff. And my very first patient was actually that weekend of GSLS on that. And it was on a Saturday. One of the doctors here in Vegas, who I did an internship with when I was a fourth year, he sent me a message and he was like, are you here yet? Because I have a patient and he really wants to see you, but he is flying back to Arizona tomorrow. And I'm like, yeah, because when you first start a business, like I would just say yes to anything. Who cares? I'm just going to see them no matter what time or day it is. I just need to get some money coming in through the door.
Yeah.
So I saw him, and then we got everything. We didn't have any furniture at the time. Like I sat on like a box to like do all of his measurements. and at least we had like the one stool that was like my examiner stool that we like carried around the office. But then during February, we were spending most of that time like getting the office furnished and that kind of thing. And after that is when COVID hit. It was like February. I was like just starting to kind of get my name out there. I barely had any patients. I was still hitting the pavement, knocking on doors, talking to different optometrists and ophthalmologists, letting them know what I was doing. And then all of a sudden COVID hit. So we basically didn't have like any income, like very little income coming in March, April, and May, basically because of the governor orders here. So it was very scary because I had just moved here, opened up this cash model clinic, which already is like a huge risk, and then only doing specialty lenses. So I have all these like super risky things going on. And then on top of that, I can't even do anything because nobody's doing anything with this whole quarantine thing. So it was a really scary part of my life. But I will say that I feel like I prepared really well because I expected not to make much money in the practice for the first 6 months. Like for being like no insurance and only specialty lenses, I thought like a good goal for the first month would be like 1 new patient fit. And then the second month, like 2 new patient fits. And so that was kind of my goal. And then we got to that, the COVID point, and then it was like, oh, great, now we have to close up. But I had saved up enough money that it kind of floated us until we could reopen. And then, like you said, Jaime, we were just like really booked, like right as soon as people got back in. I mean, I feel like eye doctors all over the country were kind of booked up with appointments. And so it's been awesome since then. So I think a lot of people are doing really well. And then I wanted to ask you, like, have you changed your flow, or like, are there any new protocols that you have in place for your office because of COVID? Like, are you scheduling patients different? Are you sanitizing the rooms different? Like, what kind of things have you done differently in your practice?
So we have a physical partition at the door, and we only allow people in by appointment. We've restricted the hours. Actually, no, I take that back. We've expanded business hours of operation. However, we are only doing 2 patients per hour, and we schedule a separate optical type of book so that patients who are coming in to shop who may have been seen another day can physically shop in a separate part of the store, so there's no physical overlap. We pretty much created an isolated opportunity for patients to come in, be seen, receive their service, buy their device, and then leave by slowing things down. And I think, you're giving that quality over quantity kind of experience. So the trade-off is that you're having, a higher chair time or a higher dollar amount per chair, right? People are invested. They're coming in now. They want to buy from you. They want things shipped to them. They're happy to pay for shipping. It's nice that ABB, I think, is still doing the free shipping on a year supply of lenses, if you direct ship. So it's great. People call up. I'm happy to extend their scripts if they're an easy, established soft contact wearer. Stephanie, to your point, you kind of find the patients where you can during that crisis time, right? You take anybody that comes in your chair. We had like 4 red eyes during those several months. And we took care of everything, and that was great. I don't know about you, but telemedicine really was not a great opportunity for our practice. A lot of it is more consultative than actual clinical care.
Yep, I feel the same way. And I think that I know that was kind of like the goal, but it was like really hard for me to like when I would have a patient and I would be talking to them, and then that'd be like kind of looking at their eye, and I'd be like, I need to see you in person, because to get at that microscopic of a level, I just felt like I couldn't provide that I didn't feel super confident in my diagnosis at that point. So I wanted to ask you, when you said that like 2 doctors just like quit, like what happened?
Doctors. It was office staff. It was
Okay.
Basically the billing department and the pre-test department.
And then they just basically, you said one of them just was like, I am quitting and I'm not coming in. And then the other one was like, I'll give you 1 week. Like that. Can you tell us about that? I think I would like have a huge panic.
Well, being stuck in Texas, it was a little bit challenging. I am a little bit, to pat my own back, I'm a little bit good at hiring. I was able to generate 115 applicants and interview about 20 of them via Zoom and make hires within 6 days for 3 new people that are full time, to replace the two. Since I doubled down and expanded hours, I brought someone else on because why not, right? It's already COVID, it's already crazy. Money's imaginary and it's all relative, right? That's kind of my mantra some days. It sounds crazy, but you can't let it all get to you, right? You can't internalize the world's stress. And so having these women, tell me really terrible things, truthfully, it kind of made me feel bad. You know, you have people that you try to take care of and they're resentful. And I'm, in all truthfulness, it's not my problem. I wish them all the best. And I think that my business is growing because I've gotten rid of negativity. So with respect to people, who are integral to your operations, your billing person quits, how do you bounce back? You find a third-party biller until you can hire and train, or you find a integration to your EHR so you can scrub your own claims and submit them through your own clearinghouse choice. There's a lot of ways you bulldoze through that, but it's nice to have opportunities like this, right? These kinds of webinars where we can talk about these random one-off things that happen, and they happen to other people too, and we just don't realize it.
Yeah.
We're all great clinicians, right? We know what an eyeball is. We know how it works. But running a business, that's a totally different beast.
Yes, there was a question that came in for you that Dr. Falco, how did you decide that business ownership was right for you?
I don't like to work a lot. And if you work really, really, really hard and you get really popular, patients will kind of do what you like. And if I have an overlord, I can't run my life like that. I value my time. I don't want to be in clinic 6 days a week. That's not who I am anymore as a professional. So I went into business and I learned someone's business model. I learned the nuances of how to treat people, how to bill, how to code, how to practice ethical, competent optometry for myself as a person and as a professional. And then I decided, yeah, let's do this. And, the choice of business ownership was a little easier, having the comfort of an established practice. 3 generations of patients. We're on our 4th generation now, which is kind of crazy to me, but
Wow.
it's really cool. It's humbling and gratifying. And I think that if you don't want to be an owner, you can still find rewarding opportunities in the profession. But for me, having the control, like right now I'm working, there's this ArcSight app for my iPad, and I'm physically working with the architect to do my own blueprints right now. And I'm learning how to create blueprints for my build out. And I don't know that I would get that chance if I wasn't my own boss. So it's kind of fun. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. You're going to choose where you spend your time, but if you can manage time, it's a lot of fun. And that's what I wanted for me.
That's awesome. And I think that you're so right when you're talking about how you're your own boss and you are the one that decides. And I think that the freedom that comes with being a business owner, it a lot of times does outweigh any sort of monetary compensation. One of the questions that came in for me was, how did you decide to open up cold with no insurance and only doing specialty lenses? And the answer to that question is, I was in a practice, I had owned 3 practices with another doctor, and we did everything: primary care, glasses, contacts, post-ops. I did my specialty lenses as well. It was just like kind of everything. And I just I sat down one day and I just asked myself, if I could have the most perfect practice with, money aside, like just enjoy coming to work every day, what would that look like? And I thought about it like really long and hard. And the answer was, well, what if I could just do specialty lenses? Is that like even possible? So then I like kind of reached out to some people that have those types of clinics, like Sue Resnick, John Gellies, Ed Boschnick, Elise Kramer, I mean, Melanie Fergrozo, Brooke Messer, I mean, all of like the best people. And I like asked them all these questions and I was like, you know what? If they can do it, I can do it too. And like, which is like, hopefully like a theme of this kind of webinar tonight, is that like, if we can do it, really anyone can. But I read this book called The Illusion of Money. It's by an author, Kyle Cease. He used to be a comedian, but now he does this other work. But in his book, he kind of goes through just getting, like you said, like that thought of money kind of just out of your head, and like people are really attached to the thought of it, and it kind of consumes people's lives. And something that like really resonated with me in that book was he gets to the point where he's like, at the end of your life, are you going to say to yourself, man, like I'm so glad that I stayed with that job because I had great benefits and it's real stable, went to work Monday through Friday, got 2 weeks of vacation a year, are you going to be at the end of your life and like really know that you did everything you wanted to? And I was like, oh my God, no, I haven't done everything I wanted to. I would be really upset if that was happening right now. So then my husband and I, we looked at each other and we were like, okay, if we do this, and we know it's super risky for this type of clinic, but if we do this, are we in it enough that if everything fails, if this like fails miserably and it just doesn't do well at all, are we okay like having no money and living in like a 1-bedroom apartment with our 2 dogs? And we were like, yep. And so we just went for it, because it's like I didn't care at that point. I was like, this is just something I have to do, because in 5 years, if someone else did this in Las Vegas and they only did specialty lenses, I would be kicking myself. Like, that should have been me. And so that's kind of my story of how I kind of got to where I am. We have a question. So Dr. Falco, if you could answer this. We all have good education in being a good doctor, but what recommendations do you have to be a good CEO?
Oh, that is a great question. I think that to be a great CEO, you have to be very self-aware and aware of your brand. You will have core values that will likely be pretty uncompromised as your business evolves. You'll still value the same things, and when you embody them and when you emulate them, you bring in and attract those same types of people. So I have a very I guess it's almost a little bit of a loose office, and it's probably a little embarrassing to admit, but I really empower people to be people. I don't expect people to be perfect. I expect strong communication, but camaraderie, respect, honesty, integrity, the things that you want, basically define them, put them on paper, and make them part consistently of your brand. And that's going to make you a good CEO, because you will have the awareness to know what your business is and who you are in that business. You don't have to define everything, though. I think there's some aspects of being an entrepreneur and a CEO that are going to be mutable. You may change how you do your AR. You may change what company you do for payroll. The minutia of that isn't as important. That's not something a CEO should be worried about. That's where delegation and a good sense of, again, time management really comes into play. And
Yeah,
so,
that was actually, it piggybacks off another question someone had for you was, how do you maintain a great environment so your staff feel supported?
oh, they just call me. They text me, they email me, I jump for them. These are my people, right? This is my tribe, and they are taking care of my patients. And I have so much ownership and loyalty to the people that have helped me to be where I am now. I can employ really great people, fair wages, and subsidize their health care. I can provide care to thousands of people a year in a beautiful area in New Jersey. The bagels are so good. It's worth the taxes. Like it's great. And having humility and having gratitude, and again, really maintaining your focus and knowing who you are as a person is integral in creating those environments where somebody will come to you if they make a mistake and they'll admit it. You don't have to call them out. And because nobody wants to be, you don't want to be micromanaged, right? And you don't want to spend your time micromanaging, because then you can't dream, you can't explore, you can't learn.
Mhm.
And to be a good CEO and entrepreneur, Stephanie, you embody all of that. You see where you can develop and where you can grow. And, you've spent the time learning, and now you are doing. And I think that's so impressive and cool. And I love what you said. It's not work to you. This is passion. And I think that your patients really see that, and that will make you so successful, even beyond your success now. And that's something that everybody should really take away from this, is that passion and true compassion are so necessary in healthcare, because anybody can choose anybody. Why do they come to you, right?
Right.
You care.
Well, and that's so sweet of you to say. And I just think that you made such a good point when you're talking about the minutia and just what CEOs should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. And I think for the longest time, I was so focused on seeing patients and, seeing 40 patients a day, working Monday through Friday with my hour-long lunch. And it was like, that was my life for like many, many years. And there was a book from, shoot, I can't remember the name. He's the CEO of Disney. Anyway, part of his book, it says exactly what you said, Jaime, where he said every Wednesday from like 8 to noon, he has nothing on his schedule, 0 meetings, nothing at all. And he uses that time to be creative. And when I read that, I was like, that sounds pretty dumb. Like I could be, I could be like making money. And this, but then I'm like, okay, if the CEO of Disney of all places is taking time to be creative and just be with his thoughts, I'm like, there's something to that. So then I started doing that, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to see patients every day. I'm going to have time where I can think and I can be creative. And you never know what's going to happen. Like even yesterday, I had like set aside some time to kind of do some like admin time, just stuff to do. And then I randomly thought of like, hey, on my website, I should have an FAQ section for keratoconus patients, and I'll just start typing. So I just like put that up today, just randomly. And it's like, I never would have been able to think of something like that if I was just maintaining my regular Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, like have no time to really, any admin time. So for you, is that something that like right off the bat, when you started your own business, that you were like, oh, I'm having admin time, or like, I am not going to be the traditional working Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 type of person? Like, how did you structure that? Did it come naturally, or was it something you had to like change kind of throughout the process? Tell us a little bit about that.
I think that when I became the sole owner of the practice, I think that changed my perspective of how I could use my personal brand. I have very loyal patients. They only want to see me. I have limited hours. They come anyway. They're amazing. I'm so humbled and blessed. And as soon as I possibly could, I wanted administrative time. It was a priority because you have to step back and you have to see the bigger picture of how a business runs. We all, again, the clinical care happens in an exam room, whether or not you're treating things, whether or not you're managing things, whether or not you're addressing chief complaints. That is something that absolutely matters, but how do you do that consistently? How do you create continuity in your processes? How do you consider something that should be mechanized and automatic and methodical without being calculated or cold?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to step back. You can't be in the trenches to look at it and figure out how can I run a, consistent operation from behind the scenes, and how can I increase, again, share revenue per patient, hourly revenue. How do you adjust for increases in staffing when you step back? Because that's a consideration. How do you find somebody you trust to see your patients so that you can continue to think and grow? I know I've gotten a lot of questions about hiring and how do you find people, and how do you know who's going to be a good fit, because you don't want to just have somebody short term, right? Stephanie, how do you, because you've had multiple practices, how have you hired in the past?
Yeah, so coming from like a small town, there's like slim pickings. So when we put like an ad out, either in like the local paper, or then I got creative and did some stuff on Facebook, and then we had like Indeed and like Monster and that kind of thing. If we like put out an ad for like a front desk or reception, we'd have like 10 resumes. So it was like, whereas some of my friends in like Chicago, they're like, oh my God, if we put an ad out on Indeed, we'll have like 600 resumes like in a day. I'm like, what? How do you even like sift through all those? So I think you're so right, Jaime, because in the beginning of this conversation, you were talking about how it's so important to have positivity and to create that culture within your practice. And I saw the shift from when I first started like 10 years ago in the practice, and how employees acted and kind of, they just didn't respect a lot of the rules and certain things. And we kind of weeded that out over time. And then when we replace people for when we're hiring, that was something that we always had as like, that's the first thing, is like, it needs to be somebody that has an amazing attitude. We can train somebody anything, if you have there's a will, there's a way. We could take this person that works at the ice cream shop down the street, but if they are super excited and motivated and they've got a great attitude, then they're going to do amazing. And so I think that for hiring, that was like one of the key things that I took away. And when I had this new clinic, it was like I was doing everything in the beginning, and my husband was helping as well. But, I was answering the phones, I was making appointments, I was seeing the patients, I was, uncovering all the equipment, sanitizing everything, covering it all up, doing all the faxes. I mean, I was like a one-man show for a while. And there were a couple other doctors that had interest in like maybe working part-time. And my husband, he like met them because he was like dropping off marketing materials. And he was like, absolutely not. Like, they are not a good representation of you as a person, the type of person you are. It's not a good reflection of your brand. And I, like you said, that your brand is so important. And so I had to take a step back and say, well, I guess you're right. Even though this person is really, really qualified and they can fit specialty lenses so well, and that's why I wanted them. But if they don't have the personality that emulates mine, or kind of our brand at least, then it's probably not the best fit. So we have a really good question. There was a recent study that showed that female ODs make on average 6% less than male ODs in the same position. What do you think about this statistic? What can be done to improve, and how do you think it still applies to entrepreneurs? Any thoughts, Jaime?
I am too busy blowing that wage gap out of the water to notice that there's a wage gap. Um,
I love that.
I think that the difference is that's so multifactorial, you know, because those female ODs work on average less hours per week generally than those male ODs. They are negotiating for vacation time and more personal time as opposed to higher salaries. You know, I think that a lot of women choose optometry because it is great work-life balance, because most of us don't have to take 3 a.m. calls to go in for surgery or, you know, pick stuff out of people's eyes. At least I don't take those 3 a.m. calls. I have an ophthalmologist for that. I could do a lot of stuff. I can choose to do it. I can not choose to do it. But again, I'm a business owner. I know what my model is and what I want to do. As far as the how to overcome the difference in wages, I think that educating yourself on what a market rate would be for your area, looking at the potential revenue that clinic is generating. How do you want your compensation structured? Do you want it to be a percent of your collections? Do you want a flat rate? What's important to you? And you know, thinking about, okay, these people earn less or these people earn more. I guess I just, in my funny money doesn't matter world, I'm too busy to think about that.
Yeah.
What about you, Stephanie? How is that something that's on your radar? How have you worked to become aware, I guess, of what your worth is?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I was trying to figure out like how much I should get paid after my residency, um, I thought to myself, okay, well, I want to ask a few people. So I did exactly what you said, is I contacted like maybe 6 different optometrists, men and women, and just kind of said, this is the type of practice I'm going into. And then I've completed this residency, you know, maybe they could share like their salaries with me, or at least kind of give me an idea of what to ask for. And that's kind of where I structured it, where I kind of took all of those people's opinions, and then I kind of said, okay, well, this one doesn't really apply because of X, and like, okay, this one does apply because it's a private practice, and so I kind of postulated what I felt like I was worth right after residency. And it's funny that the doctor that hired me, he actually paid me more, which is like really that you don't hear that very often. But if you really care about your employees and you feel like they are worth it, I think it's like I think it's totally valuable to put that extra value on that employee. And yeah, I don't know with these stats with like the women and men thing. I'm not quite sure, like you said, because I think women in general, no matter what position and what career, a lot of them do work less, or they have different hours, and one of the other things that I always see that comes up is like the type of work that women do a lot of times is not the type of work that men choose to do. And that has nothing to do with that women can't do it, but like, you know, a roofer, for example, or like a plumber or a mechanic, like those industries are typically male dominant. And it's not because there's not females that do it. There, of course there are, but you know, it's mostly males that choose those careers for whatever reason. So that's a really interesting, you know, concept. And I do think that as women become more and more equal and in the workforce just as men, then I think that that's going to quickly kind of level out. So there was another question that came in for you. Dr. Falco, you are a mother of two small children. What do you have to say to business owners who are women and are thinking about having kids? How are you able to balance everything?
Um, a good mentality, good time management, and good communication. I Not to get too personal, but I planned my first child with my fiance. It was important to us that we did it at a time that worked well for us as a couple. I did not really think about what that would mean for my business. So I had a baby in August 2017, and then I took sole ownership of my business in November, like about 3 weeks after I came back from maternity leave. Um, so I would say you're going to make your own rules if you want a family and you want a business and you want it all. I mean, all is relative, right? It's what you want, and what are you capable of achieving, and what are you satisfied with at the end of the day. Because really, in the perfect world, we would all want to sit on our butts and eat bonbons and be dripping in diamonds and not gain a pound from those bonbons, and have beautiful families and everybody's healthy and everything is great and it rains like vodka, like good vodka when it rains. Like that's my perfect world, but that doesn't exist. So how do I balance it? I have two little kids, and my 3-year-old does yoga, and I sleep trained my kid, a younger kid, as fast as possible. I learned to live with no sleep. I did not divert to caffeine to compensate for that. I turned to yoga and more productive habits where possible. I think that having realistic expectations, and Stephanie, you can speak to this too, having expectations of what are you capable of and what are you comfortable with. I like that you aimed really low when you started your business. That's very wise and very humble of you, because it empowered you to succeed. And having achievable goals, if you want a family and if you want a business, don't make them too lofty at first. Give yourself smaller steps towards those big goals, because I can tell you that negotiating, to have a new space and negotiating for a build out, that wasn't something I could have done overnight. This took, months of planning and time. And so I would do a little bit at night, each night. And on my lunch breaks, I'd be tinkering on my iPad, trying to draw the perfect dimensions for an ADA bathroom that accommodates 2 sinks, because I want to have a kid sink and an adult sink, because I love little kids and I want to see more of them in the new practice. All those things. It's just cool. It's fun to think about. And to go back to the original question of how do you have it all, and considering motherhood as you're a business owner, I think just be okay with imperfection and do your best. And if you want it, do it. And if you don't, that's great too. There's no one story, right, Stephanie? There's no one way to do things. And I waited a long time to have my babies. I'm almost 40, and I loved hearing that I was advanced maternal age, and that was really fun. I feel so good. Why would you say that to me? But that's 1970s literature that they still use. I'm rambling a little. What other questions do we have?
Yeah, well, we do have a question, and I would love your insights on this, because this is something that I struggled with for a long time. So I would love your opinions. How do you mediate between 2 employees who can't get along?
Do they work in the same proximity? Is there a way to physically separate them? And I would say that it really matters to what degree of discord is occurring.
I'll see if they post back. But I guess for me, I always think that a lot of times it has to do with they each have a different perspective on that situation. So being in the middle and saying, okay, Sheila and McKenna, let's go into the room and we're going to talk about what's going on and fully hear everybody out. And I like to tell my employees, okay, there's an issue going on, and we're going to figure out what's going on and figure out a solution. So Sheila, we are going to hear you out. We're not going to interrupt you. We're not going to say anything. We're going to hear exactly what you have to say. And then when she's done, then McKenna, same thing. We will hear you out. We will not interrupt you. And then that way people feel like they're really heard. I think what happens a lot when there's arguments with employees is they say something and then the other person jumps in and then this one jumps in and it becomes a very toxic, just really, really upsetting situation. So one of my good friends taught me that, like, just have them have the floor so they can get everything out that they need to. But then they cannot interrupt the other person. And that has helped a lot. And not only at work, but I do that in my personal life as well. Like if there's something going on, it's like, all right, let's hear this person out. And then now it's my turn. And like, now I need to be heard out. And then let's have a conversation. There was another question for you. Oh, sorry. This, let's just tag on because it's the same person. One is optical and another is the front desk. What do you think, Jaime?
I think that there's probably a home problem involved for whoever the antagonizing employee is. And it's always equal blame, right? You don't have to succumb to somebody else's negativity. It's like drinking poison and thinking someone else will drop dead. Don't do it. Bad news. But the antagonistic employee is going to escalate things each time. And your perspective, Stephanie, of speaking to people and allowing them to speak is great. I prefer a little less confrontation. I will speak to people individually, but give them that same freedom to speak. And I ask them, you know, how do you feel? What's going on? How can we improve this situation? Because at the end of the day, if you value these two employees, you're going to find a constructive way for them to work it out. And if they cannot work it out, you have to make the consideration, is this the right fit for my team? And then make the determination who is more antagonistic in this situation, and give them an action plan, speak to them again. Maybe you're going to end up replacing them. That's, you know, it really depends on the degree of escalation on their part, rather.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. Good luck. You know, I would love, Stephanie, if you want to send that person my email, I would love to, you know, hear and keep track of what's going on, because maybe I can give some advice, or if you want a form for how to do a disciplinary action with an employee. I've given a lot of write-ups. You know, I'm lax boss, but I have expectations. So it's been done, and we'll continue to do it. And it's something that I can definitely help with.
That's so sweet of you. I will absolutely take you up on that. I will email everybody that registered for this webinar your email in case they have more questions. There's another question for you, Jaime. How do you handle mistakes, especially at the peril of patients' eye health?
Mistakes at the peril of patients' eye health. As in malpractice?
Yeah, I guess I'm not really understanding the question in particularly. Maybe they'll post again.
Yeah, forgive me, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what they're meaning as well. So if you're still on, if you could just clarify, that'd be great. And another comment, you're almost 40, what's your secret? Lol.
Holla, thank you. Here, I'll even come a little closer. Makeup. I was excited to see y'all, even though you guys are looking at me and I can't see you. But I actually am developing my own skincare line. Funny enough, you should ask.
What? Tell us about that. That's amazing.
Yeah, so it is completely plant-based, organic, no parabens, sulfates, phthalates, and it is actually, the moisturizer is completely preservative-free. It's self-preserving.
Whoa.
And so time management is everything, right? I have scanned 1,500 US patents. I'm pretty sure my formula does not step on any toes. And I am submitting my patents. And if all goes well, then I will be able to share the gift of nice skin with everybody. That and yeah, good makeup. I don't make that though. Just find some concealer. Concealer's great.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I'm sure we'll be your guinea pigs if you ever needed to give out
I
some.
would love to share. It even fights Demodex. There's Melaleuca in it.
That is so awesome.
It's
So
dorky though.
another question, with such specialty or niche practices, what have been the best marketing strategies to achieve the level of success you doctors have achieved? So I guess I can start by answering that, and I'd love your opinions, Jaime, as well. Um, I think that when I was in my other practices where we did everything, marketing was not a priority, because we were like the only doctor in two of the out of the three practices. We were the only doctor in those cities, so it was like patients had nowhere else to go, so we didn't really have to do much marketing. But then in the larger practice, where in my hometown, we tried to do things like trunk shows and just other like little social media things. And then when I moved here, where it's a bigger city and there's much more competition, now I'm really, fighting for like some of those top spots when people are searching, keratoconus Las Vegas or scleral lenses Las Vegas. I'm really fighting to get to those top spots. So the things that have worked well for me so far, and I guess we'll revisit this after maybe the clinic's been open for a year, but the Google AdWords has been something that has been helping. I was managing it myself and having like zero success, but then I hired a company to do it. If anybody needs that information, I'd be happy to. And digital marketing, forget it. Me trying to do my website on Squarespace took me so long, and I still couldn't get it right. And my husband was like, listen, you need to just suck it up and pay the however many $2,000 or $3,000, whatever it ended up being. And you need to just hire somebody to build it out for you, because you are spending so much time during work, after work, on the weekends, and you're still not even happy with how this is turning out. So I ended up hiring my friend, and like I said, happy to share his information because he is fantastic. But they've got different arms of their services. So like one is like they can help build a website. I'm like, great. And then I didn't even know what SEO stood for. I mean, I feel so dumb being like a millennial, and it's like I like barely learned what that term was like 2 years ago. And he had to explain to me why that was important and the ways that you get higher. And a lot of it is done with these like backlinks that I'm like, I don't have time to manage that. I don't even know how to like do these backlink things. How do you find these opportunities? So I'm like, forget it. Once again, I'm just going to pay them. It's like the ROI on it is like an incredible investment. So those are things that I feel like are oftentimes overlooked. And I was reading in an optometric magazine on like, how there's like the breakdown of like the different where you should be as far as the percentages. Because for me, I was like, well, am I even in the right percentages in these columns? Payroll, is like the highest cost, cost of goods. They kind of like go neck and neck. And then after that, you should spend 7% on rent, and you should spend like 2% on marketing. And I guess for me, it's a little bit different because of the type of office I'm operating, but my marketing's at like 10% right now. But because I'm seeing such a huge return, I'm just going to keep going, because as my practice grows, that percentage will decrease as we generate more income. So for me, that has worked really well. And then knocking on doors, honestly, that's something that like 95% of optometrists will not do. They just, I don't know if it's an ego thing or they just feel like they don't have time. And I will tell you, it's incredibly exhausting. I have so much respect for those drug reps, those poor people that have to go door to door and they have to get in their cars and drive to the next place. It's so exhausting. But that has been the most effective, is like getting to actually shake their hand, look them in the eye, and tell them kind of what I'm doing. So those are the things so far that have been working. I'll just type in this little chat box for anybody that cares, my friend's website. And he does give, like, I think he does give, because I'm like, can you do something for my optometry friends? And he's like, yeah, I can offer them like 10% off, like, you know, their website build, or like if they do SEO or whatever. So I'm like, oh, good. So if you do end up like asking him, make sure you tell him that you need your discount.
That's awesome if he does SEO. I'm glad you brought that up. And I like that you've transferred your marketing costs to SEO versus the actual website itself.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's so smart. Build a website, constantly generate content. You don't have to dig in the trenches in the back end to have all these AdWords that make your clinic pop on Google. You know, it's delegate that. That's being a good CEO right there, is know what your limitations are. And is your time really, your ROI on your time is not best spent typing on this computer right now.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. This is a really good question from a third year student, which I think we should answer this. I'm curious if either of you can recall a particular moment when you gained your confidence as a business owner. P.S. Thanks again for offering advice on Facebook when I posted on scleral lens practitioners a few weeks back. So Jaime, do you have a particular aha moment, or was it like, do you remember like a certain time or place, or where you felt like I'm confident now?
Yeah, I don't know that I can ever say that I'm 100% confident. I have my own insecurities. You know, I am a risk-taking personality. So for me, I've always had some confidence. And again, that the trust in the universe that my business is going to work and that things work out, right? The swagger, I've always had the swagger though. I think you fake it till you make it, right? It's, if you can't feel positive all the time, try to look positive.
Mm-hmm.
Just find something to focus on that makes you smile. You know, smiling's a lot easier than frowning. I like smiling. It's my favorite. Buddy the Elf.
I love that. Yeah, gosh, that's a great question, and I don't think I've ever been asked that before, Chris. So that's an awesome question, and I think I would agree, Jaime. I feel like I faked it a lot in the beginning, where I just came off really confident because patients will see right through you. Because I remember as a student, like the moment I like didn't know what I was doing, like there'd be patients and they'd be like, "Do you know what you're doing?" And I'm like, ah. And so I quickly learned that now that I'm a doctor, I really have to have that front. And, you know, I do know way more than this patient in my chair about what's going on with their condition. Gosh, but I would say that when you start your practice, and then like when a lot of the things that were very uncomfortable and scary, when they become super easy and almost second nature and you don't even bat an eye, I think that is kind of a sign that like, wow, I have really come a long way from starting my business to, you know, where I am now. I think that, I guess for me, that's kind of like a moment where I can kind of pinpoint. But I know we're at 6:30, so I want to be respectful of all your guys' time. And like I said, I will email all of you guys Dr. Falco's information, if that's okay with you, Dr. Falco. And if you have any other questions that we didn't answer, she's an amazing resource. I mean, she's a mom, she's a business owner. She lives in 2 different states, and apparently she's starting a new makeup line, which is like amazing. Super excited to hear more about that as we go. But yeah, Jaime, I just want to say thanks so much for just having this fun conversation with me tonight. And I really, really hope that people enjoyed and learned. And I'm super excited to post this on my website so that people can go back and listen to it. Or if people weren't able to join tonight, they can definitely tune in. So Jaime, I'll let you have the last words.
Well, I just want to thank you, Stephanie, for having me as part of Woo University. I'd like to thank all of our listeners and future listeners. You know, camaraderie in this profession is so important. We have to work together to overcome vertical integration and what all of the different external distractors are, right? So these types of webinars and these opportunities for people to learn and to share information are so important. You know, please keep learning. Please, you know, anything I can do to support you and help you, you know, I'm happy to do for my colleagues. So feel free to email me. And Stephanie, thanks again.
All right, everyone, have a good evening. Bye.
Take care, everybody. Bye.